thank you so much for joining us, and I'm really excited to hear a lot of your input. I did a lot of research on you today, and my hat goes off to you, sir. You are a true Canadian.
Well, thanks. I don't know if no one anticipates going through all that when they say, maybe I'll get involved in politics after work. But you get into it, and the issues are really important, and it became a family affair for us. And every time you've got that fork in the road, and the other side tells you, get out, you have to make a choice. You just leave and you say, forget it. On the other hand, we have conviction. We have thousands of people across Ontario and Canada telling us to keep going. And we've chosen to keep going.
So let's just back up a little bit in case some people aren't familiar with your background and the history of the New Blue and where you came from. You have history with the Conservative Party federally and provincially, right? Can you tell us how you first got involved with the politics?
So I got involved in politics actually very, very local at the student level in undergrad and university. And, growing up, I grew up with values that I think most Ontarians would agree with. My parents, I was born in Ontario. My parents weren't. But like so many millions of others, they picked Ontario because Ontario and Canada was a place where there was a set of shared values and that welcomed people like my parents. And I wasn't really following politics. I was concentrating on school and sports growing up and got involved in undergrad. And then by the time I went to law school, I was in law school in Ottawa and decided, I'm going to get involved and volunteer in partisan politics. And it was around the time of the 2005 election. It was right before that. And when you go to law school, you realize, wow, if you have any kind of common sense, you're a conservative. So it became very clear to me after studying numbers and math and engineering, going to law school and studying legal issues, that I was a conservative. And I volunteered for the Conservative Party of Canada. And it was always a way of getting involved, giving back, standing up for the process and the democratic process. First, I got involved federally. And then provincially, I was on the federal National Policy Committee for 2 cycles, 4 or 5 years, elected by presidents, and really working hard in getting a grassroots policy process for the federal Conservative Party, because, the powers that be never want to have a grassroots policy process. And things kind of fast forward, things went forward very quickly, I would say. In 2016-17, after Patrick Brown became leader of the PC party, and he flip-flopped on basically every core issue. But the one issue that, not many people, or there wasn't a committed voice against calling him out on it, was the carbon tax. And I led a campaign called Axe the Carbon Tax. And then very quickly after that, there was all this voter fraud going on inside the Ontario PC party. That's how they were picking some of their candidates. And they were really targeting candidates that were standing up or had a political opinion that was conservative. And it wasn't in line with Patrick Brown and the Ontario PC party brass saying, we're going to be a left-wing progressive party, top-down party. And it was really nefarious, Rick and Brendan, because instead of just telling people you can't run, they would let people run. And then they would find out, oh, no, this person's going to win the nomination. And then vote rigging would happen. Like in Hamilton, the Hamilton police looked into it and verified it in 2018 that there was voter fraud going on. And so then I became the face of something called Take Back Our PC Party. And we were gathering thousands of signatures across Ontario to call a general meeting of this party. And at the time, wow, in hindsight, Rick, it's quite interesting. I was encouraging people to reform the Ontario PC party from the inside. Let's not recreate the wheel. We got a problem with the leader. Let's push back democratically. They got a constitution. I'm saying it, and it's, I can't believe it actually in hindsight, because what these guys did, instead of letting the democratic process unfold and calling a general meeting, of the party to vote on the carbon tax, to redo a bunch of nominations. They said, you know what we'll do? We'll sue this guy and bankrupt him. And they did the premise of the lawsuit on this idea that I'm not allowed to mail people that they decide, are on some kind of a PC list. For example, if you're a donor, that's public information. I'm not allowed to mail those people, right? And that's the premise of how they spun it inside the party, whisper campaigns and through the press. The reality is, in court, I was very fortunate. In 6 weeks, we fought really hard, ran up a legal bill that was extraordinary, but fought really hard. And in 6 weeks, the judge kicked it out. It was 3 days before Christmas in 2017. The judge said to the PC party, you guys have no legal merit to your argument, and you got no facts to back up what you're saying. You're not one piece of evidence to back up what you're saying. So in hindsight, it was very clear they were just trying to bankrupt me, right? Because if you guys know, you get in a lawsuit, someone sues, you can't get out. There's no exit. It's basically fork over the money that the other person's asking for, pay off their lawyer, and maybe if they let you out, you're out. And I had no out, and it was I had to dig in and fight, and we won. And that was kind of, I guess, the first time I became what you would say a public figure. People within the Conservative Party of Canada or the PC party knew about my work organizing grassroots policy meetings and helping out, volunteering in different campaigns in North York, Mississauga, Cambridge, where we live. But they kind of pushed it to the max. And then I thought, and my wife thought, okay, we've turned the corner. It was just Patrick Brown, a couple people. We didn't know it was a whole party problem, that the party brass really had no problem with the direction that Patrick Brown was taking the Ontario PC party in. The problem was that there was all this pushback from the members. And instead of fixing what was going on, instead of saying, he was wrong on the carbon tax, he was wrong on other issues, voter fraud, let's change it. They decided to pin this CTV news story on him, these allegations, and force him out of caucus like that. And I remember watching it at the time and saying that it's a month after I won the lawsuit. I know the leader's on shaky ground because now the grassroots know this guy just tried to destroy a party member and an activist. But instead of just saying, Patrick, caucus saying, Patrick, your time's up, buddy. Like, you're on the wrong side of the carbon tax. There's voter fraud. There's other allegations going on about bags of money going missing at party headquarters. They concoct this Me Too story. I don't know. Half of it's right. Half of it's wrong. I don't know. I don't get into people's personal lives. I don't care.
No.
Okay. I don't care.
For the record, so everybody knows, Patrick Brown was a former running mate for the Ontario Conservative Party, and the allegations of some sort of sexual misconduct did go out against him. We're not going to go into that. I believe there is currently no legalities associated with that. He's in the clear. But yeah, we're not here to really commentate on that.
But I remember that story.
Yeah,
I sure
I was
remember
just
it.
bringing it up because it was a diversion, right?
Yeah, it was weird.
Like,
that's what I'm going to be getting at here. That was so weird how that happened, and it was out of the blue too.
It was crazy. And but we were thrust into this leadership race, and all the candidates running for leader were axe the carbon tax, and Doug Ford was saying axe the carbon tax, respect the grassroots. And we're still see it 5 years later. Pierre Poilievre now every other day, axe the carbon tax, axe the carbon tax. Wow, that campaign and that taglines really had staying power. It's become a litmus test in conservative leadership races from 5 years ago. And so my wife ran, Belinda. She became she won her nomination 2 weeks, became the MPP for the riding of Cambridge. But then three serious things happened. And we can go, like, that just took me 10 minutes just to describe the lawsuit. And each of these is going to take me a while, but I'm just going to do the Coles Notes version, then we can dig in. Sure. I ran for party president of the PCs in 2018. Doug did not clean out the PC party, the back room. He left the same people in place. I ran against an old hand establishment guy who's been there since, I don't know, the Mike Harris days. Okay. They were really upset that I ran. But they let me run. And I went into convention, and they thought if the premier's office and the party staff were against me, there's no way I was going to win. And they had some deals cut with other figures, and they couldn't stop me. So they rigged it on the day of the convention in 2018. Fast forward 2019, my wife presents a private members bill to make voter fraud illegal inside political party elections because there's no law against that. So she's the MPP of Cambridge, first private members bill. We need a law, get rid of this voter fraud. They kill the bill. They vote in favor of it. They initially say they're against it. They vote in favor of it at second reading. Then they let it sit at a committee. They kill it. So now at this point, we're saying, wow, like there's deep-rooted problems in this party. Like if they can't even agree that voter fraud's a bad idea, we got serious problems. And then by 2020, let's skip through the conservative leadership race. It was being run by the prominent figures in the leadership campaign from Caroline Mulroney's provincial leadership race. They still had an axe to grind against me. And I caught fire in that conservative leadership race federally with a pledge to drill, build pipelines and adapt when I was asked about climate change. And instead of taking a deal to help Erin O'Toole, they kicked me out of that race twice. They set me up and they kicked me out of that race twice. And a couple months later, they kicked my wife and the entire Cambridge PC board right out of the provincial party because she was the only current or former PC MPP to vote against the initial passing of Doug Ford's lockdown bill.
No, there's a lot to unpack there.
It's a lot. And then we started the New Blue Party. There you go. That's the 2-minute Coles Notes version.